Do you remember what it was like to be the new employee? This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Growth Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. One of the biggest challenges facing the accounting profession today is the talent pipeline, not just attracting new professionals, but ensuring that they're truly ready to succeed in a rapidly evolving profession. A new report from the Illinois CPA Society titled The Readiness Divide explores the disconnect between how early career accounting and finance professionals view their skills and how their managers assess their readiness. The findings highlight gaps in areas like communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and even tech skills. Gaps that are fueling workplace friction and adding pressure to an already strained pipeline. Joining me today to discuss this important research and what it means for the profession is Geof Brown, President and CEO of the Illinois CPA Society. Welcome back, Geof.
Great to be here, John. Thanks for having us.
So the report's title, The Readiness Divide, it really captures the issue. Can you explain what you mean by that divide and what prompted the Illinois CPA Society to focus on this topic?
Sure. When you think about everything that's happening in and around the profession, so things like the rapid pace of change relative to the legislative environment, regulation, things of that nature, technology, continued comments from firms and employers about the readiness of their early career talent, watching early careerists get let go and not understand why. That appeared to us that there was a gap in understanding between what early careerists thought about their own preparation and their own place in the profession, and where their firms and employers wanted and or needed them to be. So that was like one big motivator. And then also thinking about the fact that we're racing towards this post 120 world or post 150 world, where people are going to be having less and less time on campus to prepare themselves to be career ready, if you will. So making that transition from college to the workforce. And we knew there was a great opportunity to do one, assess readiness. So really understanding what early career professionals think about themselves and their own preparation, uncovering any of the gaps that may exist. So where expectations and experiences don't align and any additional support that may be needed. And then really, we're driving towards action. We don't want to just highlight a problem and then say, deal with it. We want to give some concrete steps that firms, employers, early career talent can do to better develop themselves.
So one of the striking findings is that early career professionals consistently rated themselves much higher than their managers did across 37 different skills. What do you think that says about the disconnect between self-awareness and employer expectations?
Yeah, honestly, it means that we have a big job to do on both sides of the fence,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that this lack of alignment really doesn't position the profession and its participants for the future. It means that we have an opportunity to really help both sides of the coin, set clear expectations, and really build that foundation that's going to be necessary to deliver the results that we need for the future. Taking it a little higher level, I'm not surprised. We've
Mm-hmm.
done briefings with a few different audiences about the report's findings, but we also did a lot of preparation on the front end. So we knew that there was a gap between what early careerists thought and what their employers expected. We just didn't know it was that vast. And that's really the reason that we pushed forward with this survey.
Do you think it's generational? That's probably part of it, right? I mean, generational divide always plays some factor, right? But I mean, how much of it do you think is generational and just how because my son is 22, so he was probably somewhere he would have been in that cohort that you interviewed. Um, and of course, there's always the discussions about the current generation and how they were brought up differently and the trophy generation, all those other things. I mean, do you think it's related to that, or do you think maybe it's always been like this? There's always been that
Um,
divide.
I think what we're dealing with and the sheer magnitude of it today is certainly generational, but you could pick this up and say, what was it 50 years ago?
Right.
So one of the briefings that we did was with our endowment fund board of directors. And we had some individuals that, you know what, when I was in the profession starting out 45 years ago, there was the same gap, but it just wasn't as, as apparent, and nobody was interested in it because the profession was moving at a much slower pace. You had more time to develop. When you think about the impact of technology, we want early careers to be ready day one to sit across from a client or a business partner to deliver those strategic insights that are really going to drive value for their organizations.
Right. And just so doesn't sound like I'm picking on Gen Z, back in the 90s when I graduated from college, I'm Gen X, and they called our generation the slacker generation. So I guess it applies, every generation takes its hits at some point in time, right?
I mean, we also drank water from a hose. We had
Right.
latchkey
That's right.
kids. So,
That's right.
I think just looking at it from a pure generational lens is a little bit lazy. And that's, kind of what
Mhm.
I said to the team. I'm like, we have to go a little bit deeper than this, really understand what are the environmental factors that are contributing to this. And we know that the generation that we're looking at, many of them finished college in a virtual format, meaning they didn't have that opportunity to grow and develop there. A lot of their people managers probably started out in the field during COVID, so they may not have had the benefit of the experiences that the generations before them had to
Right.
really understand what it means to manage someone and help steward their career. And so there's just like a confluence of factors that we feel are driving us to this position, but it's really about what do we do going forward.
Right. And blaming a generational divide, it's a nice excuse, or it gives you something to blame, but doesn't necessarily provide any solutions. So, it only gets you so far.
But I'm telling
So,
you, Gen X were underappreciated.
oh, preaching to the choir. Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody remember that. That should be the takeaway from this podcast is that Gen X is underappreciated. But one of the things, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the managers in your survey, they rated communication, critical thinking, and problem solving skills especially low for early career employees. And as you've been saying, that's probably not a huge surprise. But why are these particular skills so critical today, and what risks do firms and businesses face if these gaps aren't addressed?
Yeah, so I think the way the profession is changing, these skills have never been more important. We have so much more access to data, and if early careers aren't able to draw insights from it and navigate that ambiguity, make decisions without constant direction, then there is a lot of risk for organizations. And I think right now, because they haven't had opportunities to flex those muscles in a meaningful way in the context of the workplace, they're really unprepared for the challenges that they're facing. But stepping back from that, they can't leverage the power of the tools that we have in front of us if they can't unlock the insights and drive business decisions. And so, the opportunity is here for us now to really think about, okay, what experiences do we have to put these individuals in to help them flex the communication muscles, help them, exercise their critical thinking skills and really solve those problems. Answers are readily available through Google, ChatGPT, whatever it is. But if you don't know how to check that and analyze what you're getting back, then there's a tremendous amount of risk for public accounting firms and, organizations in business and industry.
Yeah, and we've been having meetings with accounting firms recently, as I'm sure you have as well. And one of the things we're hearing from firms is they're looking to sort of speed up the process of moving associates into higher leverage roles, such as manager or director. And really, the only way to do that is through communication skills, critical thinking, and so forth. So there is an interest on the part of the business to get that done a little bit faster.
But they really have to set those expectations from day one,
Hmm.
really having conversations about the tone and the type of communication vehicle you should use internally and externally. Is this a text? Is this an email? Is this a
Yep.
direct message? Do you pick up the phone? And so, I mean, we're in the membership business, Don. You guys are in a similar position. I mean,
Right.
I know that we have people on our team that struggle with this. I can only imagine what it's like when you're, in a high stakes environment like some of our members exercise in, some of the environments that early careers find themselves in.
Right. And just coincidentally, my son is actually in the office today. He's helping us out with our membership renewal campaign. And I laughed when he came in because we gave him an actual phone. All of our communication is done through our laptops and Teams. We gave him an actual phone to make phone calls on. He had used a phone before with a handset, but he didn't know how to transfer a call. I was saying, well, do you have to hit 9 in order to get an outside line? Do you have to hit 1? I mean, there's all of these things like we take things for granted that a lot of younger generational employees are not going to understand.
So, I really think it also comes down to just helping the early careers understand, when they need to flex. There may
Right,
be certain situations where, yeah, I can text my manager or I can text a partner. But when you're thinking about something that's a little bit deeper, send the email. If it's urgent, pick up the phone. I mean,
right,
I think about the fact that I think there were probably two people that call me, like my mom and dad. Everybody else is a text, but that's
right.
like my personal life. And I know that that starts and stops when I exit and enter this building.
Right. And I think what I tell a lot of people is it's not so much about what you want, it's how they want to communicate. So
Mhm.
your parents are probably more comfortable on the phone, but you probably have friends who, if you called them, would be shocked. So they prefer text message. So I think that's part of it is making sure that the employee knows that it's not necessarily about what your preferences are. It's about understanding the preferences of the client, your coworker, the partner, whoever that may be.
Well, and then, you also have to think about the business that we're in.
Mhm.
You're going to work with different managers on different jobs. You're going to work on different leaders on different projects. And so you're going to have to be capable of shifting expectations, shifting your approaches relative to each of those teams. And I think that's also an issue that early careers are struggling with. But I think managers need to take some responsibility and say, hey, this is Don and I's first time working together. So I need to, from day one, say, Don, here are my expectations about communication. Here are my expectations around, whether you don't understand something or if you need more information, ask the question, say the thing. And I think a lot of that would cut through some of the issues that we're facing. On critical thinking and problem solving, this is a generation that's used to getting, everything right 10 times.
Mhm.
It's when they do something that 10th time and it doesn't go the same way, just being able to stop and say, okay, wait a minute. What did I miss? What questions do I need to ask? How do I solve this versus throwing their hands up and walking away?
Right, exactly. So a little ago, you mentioned the words shared responsibility. So if talent readiness is about shared responsibility and it involves early career professionals, managers, educators, and even professional associations like ours, what are some practical steps each of these groups can take to help close that divide? I mean, from the professional association standpoint, personally, I think what you're talking about is a huge opportunity for Illinois, for New Jersey state CPA societies to provide that training that accounting firms may not be able to provide because they're so busy, serving clients.
Hmm. I think when we started this project, we knew that there was going to be an opportunity for each of those segments to play a role in the future state. So for early careers, it's really just taking stock of your own skills, attributes, but having the self-awareness to admit, you know what? I know a lot about this, but I don't know a lot about that subject. And, taking the opportunity to say, hey, manager or mentor or coach, help me develop these skills and really understanding that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. And so giving people the permission to show that vulnerability can be a huge asset. Managers need to also understand, what am I good at? What am I not good at? And closing those gaps because they're stewards of somebody else's career development. And that's a very important responsibility. I think as a profession, we haven't done enough to support those individuals. Instead, in this current state, we're just piling more on them. They're at a weird confluence because they have their managers and then they have partners above them that, hey, I'm in this role where I not only have to do, but I also have to teach and coach. And so we really need to make sure that they're adequately prepared and that they actually want to be in those roles. It's just understood that as you progress, you're going to manage more people and bigger jobs. But is that always going to be the best situation for everyone in those roles? Firms and employers, they need to make sure that they have the systems and structures that are designed to support each of the constituencies that are going to play a role in this. I think educators, a lot of them will say to us, hey, we are maxed out in what we can teach. And we agree with that in some regards, especially if people are going to be spending less and less time on campus. But what they can do is help paint the picture of what the realities of being in the workforce are going to look like. Meaning, yeah, you not only have to be technically proficient, you have to have some intellectual curiosity. You have to get involved in a professional community like the Illinois CPA Society or New Jersey, just to kind of round out your professional experience. But they also have to adapt the way they're teaching to help incent and enhance the skills that are going to be necessary once someone gets into the workforce. So doing more simulations, case studies in the context of what they're already teaching versus a lot of lectures and things of that nature. And we get it. Not every class is really going to be designed to support that type of learning, but if the opportunities exist, leverage them. I think there's also an opportunity to bring people on campus that can deliver messages about the realities of the workforce. That's a small feat. Professional organizations like ours, we have an opportunity to be a convener. We have an opportunity to drive dialogue, to show that there are opportunities to develop success skills in the context of what we're doing from a training and education and development and community building standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one point you made about connecting students with firms so that students can get an idea of what the workplace is like. Because I do sympathize with new professionals who maybe have not worked in an office environment, and to be dropped into that situation. I mean, everything from how you dress to how you communicate. I mean, the work is one thing, but like all of those other, the office politics, if you will, all that stuff is completely new to them. So I think anything that the profession and educators can do, and professional associations, to help acclimate them more quickly and better to that office environment is going to make everybody's lives easier.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we didn't take to stock or that we neglected in this conversation was just the impact of this hybrid environment. I think, it's just become, second nature to a lot of us, but it really hasn't evolved the way the rest of the world has in terms of developing and growing our people. You probably hear this all the time from firm leaders and employers that, wow, some of those groups that came in during the pandemic, they're certainly not at the same level as some of the groups before them. And I think it's just sharing that physical space, having the opportunity to learn by observation. We know that, we point to it, yet we're not doing anything remarkably different than what we were doing in 2020, 2021, 2022. And we know there's a problem. So I think it's really, let's stop, reassess the situation, and really think about what's going to put our organization in the best position to support early careers, what's going to put an early careers in the best position to grow and develop appropriately. And then how do we just have better communication about expectations and where people need to be along their career progression.
Yeah, and we have found some interesting conversations with firm leaders. I think there's an assumption amongst more experienced CPAs that it's the younger generation that doesn't want to come into the office. And what we found is that the new graduates actually want to be in the office, they want to interact, and it's more managers and above who actually, they might be married, they might have families, they might have commitments. They're the ones who prefer a hybrid or work at home. And that creates a situation where the person training the new hire isn't actually in the office, and that can create some issues. So yeah, I agree completely with you that the hybrid environment, it's still definitely a work in progress.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, when you talked about, there's a couple of issues with the hybrid environment. Delivering and receiving feedback in a hybrid fashion, is that most optimal? Does the hybrid environment really support learning and development? Because we have some people that can't learn this way. They need to be standing next to you, watching you do something, and a screen share just isn't going to be sufficient.
Right, right. No, I agree. All right. So to wrap up, for CPAs and firm leaders, what's the one thing you hope they take away from this report in terms of how they can better support and develop the next generation of accounting professionals?
Yeah, I think the one thing that they should take away from this is that the next generation, they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to develop, but they also want you to remember what it was like to be new. Meaning you can't have an expectation that career readiness starts on day one, that we have to create the conditions for them to be successful and to thrive, and give them a little bit of space and grace to really take in all that they're going to be exposed to in such a fast-paced, fast-changing, but important profession.
Yeah. So remember what it's like to be new. I think that's a great lesson for really any life situation. Yeah. All
Agreed.
right.
Agreed.
Yeah. Geof, thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Don. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening or watching. Access the show notes for a link to the full report and other resources.